we're going to be shifting tone quite dramatically right now, starting with the tragedy in Minnesota. In a few seconds, I am going to play the video of the shooting, and it's graphic, and it has profane language. So if you have children at home, now would be the time to sort of move them away from this. So yesterday, for those of you who are not aware, a U.S. citizen, a 37-year-old mother of 6, was killed by ICE officials after she appeared to drive at one of the officers after a bunch of them were telling her to get out of her car. This has very quickly become a political hot potato, and we'll just start right now with the video, and then we're going to talk first about the facts on the ground. Let's play it.
No! No! Shame! Shame! Oh my fucking God! What the fuck? What the fuck? You just fucking, what the fuck did you do?
In a sign of just how divided our nation is right now, people are watching this same video and seeing very, very different things. Depending on your politics, Democrats, some of them are calling murder right now and blaming the Trump administration. Republicans are saying this was an act of domestic terrorism. And we're going to talk about the politics in a second, but let's just start with the facts on the ground. Dan, I want to start with you. Based on what you see here, do you feel like the use of deadly force was unfortunately justified?
Yeah, I mean, look, I am incredibly sympathetic to law enforcement, whether it's police in New York City or ICE officials. You have to make a snap decision. Like when I watch that video, I, I don't know what her intent is. I mean, I hear the officer saying, "Get out of the car, get out of the car." She puts it in reverse and appears to kind of peel out. Right. So to me, you are resisting. You are disobeying law enforcement, and you are kind of resisting what they're asking. If I'm that officer that the car is coming at, I don't know if she's going to swerve, if she's going to. So do I think it's just like, yeah, self-defense is self-defense in a snap instant decision. And I am not going to say that that was, unjustified. I'm not going to necessarily say it was justified, but who the heck am I to sit here in a chair and second guess what is a life and death snap decision for the officer himself, other officers, and the public. I was raised, if an officer tells you to do something, you do it.
Yeah.
You do not sit there and say no and try to run away or drive away. So, but just that is heartbreaking to watch on many levels.
Sean, before I come to you, just a couple of things. I mean, you see the video there, but officials are saying that this woman had been following ICE officials around and sort of harassing them throughout the day, that there's a story before the video actually begins. It's also important to keep in mind that apparently this officer who made the shot, he had been dragged by anti-ICE protesters before who had tried to ram him with his car. You have to think about the mentality of the officer too. Just sort of weigh in on your take on this in terms of
and not just, but like very seriously injured in a previous incident. So like you have somebody who's thinking to himself, I know how this thing turns out. I'll start with what Dan said. First of all, the loss of life is tragic, right? This is this is not some hardened criminal that was out there with a gun pointing it. Like, I don't think this is how she thought that day would go.
Yeah.
And so I feel bad for her and her family, because this was not how this goes. That being said, to Dan's point, a couple things. One, she put herself in this situation. She was, by every account, again, facts on the ground, impeding a law enforcement operation. She had been trolling them all day. She put that vehicle in the middle of an investigative area for a reason, right? She wasn't some random bystander on the street that got caught up in something. She was actively trying to impede a legal, lawful law enforcement action. The officer stood in front. Again, with Dan's point, regardless of even his previous experiences, bottom line is she was told to stop, to exit the vehicle, and she accelerated at the officer. That being said, I will tell you, and I think where this is going to come down legally is there's always an issue with in law enforcement. Force must be met with force. So if someone's wielding a knife, you can't shoot them with a gun. I mean, there's a very and I'm not the right person. I say this not because I'm defending them, just because I think when this comes down to the legal aspects of did they act legally. The other thing is, you had one officer she had her window down. The officer is there at the side of her thing. The other officer puts himself in front of the vehicle. I don't know if that's proper procedure or not. I just don't. And so there's going to be, I think, a real look when we talk about the reaction. Was procedure followed? What did she do, as to your point, leading up to this thing? But I think, once she accelerated what she did and she's coming, I mean, when you see that from the other angle, and there is another news organization, I think it's an NBC affiliate in Minneapolis, that shows it from the officer standpoint, from him coming from his back at her. And there's no question she's accelerating, taking him out. So he has an obligation at that point to act defensively to protect his own life. And I think at the end of the day, on that standpoint, this is going to get ruled a justified shooting.
So the knee-jerk reaction to this has been, frankly, gross. I want to play this video of the mayor of Minneapolis and what he said after this.
And I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you.
Dan, I just feel like this sort of rhetoric is one of the reasons we found ourselves in this position yesterday. I mean, you have certain leaders who want to alienate ICE or make them out to be these horrible people who are out to get Americans. That leads to protests. And not only that, but escalations of those protests, people tracking ICE officials, things very quickly escalate. Am I wrong about this? Or are you as equally outraged by that reaction by the mayor?
No, I think you're right. And I think both sides yesterday went quickly to their tribal corners. I think Kristi Noem's initial, this was a domestic terrorist, and kind of painting the deceased as this out of control, person, was not the right thing to say at the moment. Even Tom Homan's initial reaction was, hey, I don't know enough yet. We need to learn, we need to gather the facts. So unfortunately, the knee jerk then, to me, the mayor, I mean, it's totally inappropriate. First off, using language like that. Secondly, ICE is doing their job, right? You can say, Donald Trump, we need to win the House back and change ICE policy, but ICE is doing their job. They have a right to go and try to find people who are here illegally. It's aggressive. It's not my, politics. But you are right. To me, it was sickening and sad to watch both sides just jump so hard at painting the other as this total extreme, when I think, as we just talked about it with the facts, it's somewhere in the middle, and it's tragic.
Sean, I want to come to you on the domestic terrorism very quickly. But Dan, is there any Democrat that you feel has had a good reaction to this? I mean, there, the reactions, there was tons of them. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries put out you were sending it around in our chat last night, put out an Instagram sort of video saying this guy's got to be criminally charged, AOC calling this murder. Was there anyone that you felt, any Democratic leader that you felt did take the right tone here?
Honestly, those who didn't say something right away, I think, I mean, look, I get why Jeffries and others are doing what they're doing. I get why Noem did what she did. No one, in my opinion, was kind of calm and rational about this, because I think everyone's afraid of their base.
Sean, I know you're going to sound off on the left here, but before you do, what do you make of some folks in the administration calling this domestic terrorism?
So I think the word that comes to mind for me about this whole situation is unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
She shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't. She had been clearly, again, as you pointed out, every account, facts on the ground, no dispute. She had been trolling them and following them and trying to disrupt their operations all day. The point that I made earlier is the following. She should not have been there. She should not have done that, but it should not have escalated to the point that it did, right? And again, this is why, to me, I'll say this: domestic terrorism is a phrase that you use for somebody who is clearly trying to. She was trying to disrupt. She was trying to get in the middle of an operation. That's very different from somebody bringing a weapon to inflict pain on somebody. Yes, what it turned into was potentially harming a law enforcement operator carrying out their legal duties that they were ordered to do. There was no reason she should have accelerated, but that's very different from somebody that was trying to like plow into people using that vehicle intentionally. I don't believe she went there with the intent to hurt anyone. She wanted to be a disruptor, an agitator, right? That's a very different person in my book that did something that intended to cause pain or suffering or death in a crowd of innocent civilians. That's just it. There's a big line. So to Dan's point, I will say this is, as I said, unfortunate. They should have probably addressed her earlier in the day. She is there's no sign that she had weapons with her or that she was she freaked out. That's what I think. I mean, someone stands in front of your car, they think you suddenly go, oh my God, I'm going to be arrested. I mean, I'll just say this hypothetically. When you're a kid, you might do something wrong and you suddenly see cops and you start to run instinctively because you maybe were drinking in the woods. That's just a hypothetical.
No name.
And so like you flee, and who knows, maybe, but I'm saying we'll never know. But the bottom line is this is not somebody who I think came to inflict harm on individuals. She came to disrupt an operation. And I wish that it had been dealt with sooner so we wouldn't be having this conversation. But full stop, last point I'll make, for Jacob Frey to use words like that, and I get he's pandering to the base in Minneapolis, but they were not there doing something nefarious. They were there carrying out a legally ordered operation to enforce the laws of the United States. If you don't like them, change them, but you can't blame ICE for doing their job.
Dan, there's some reporting in Axios from last night that some Democrats are thinking about engaging in a shutdown fight over this incident. I know. I mean, you look at the polling.
To defund the police. Yeah, go for it. Right. I mean,
like clearly they're trying to sort of latch onto this notion that, what the president is doing with ICE is not popular with a lot of Americans. I haven't seen the most recent polling on that, but like this could backfire. Could this backfire on the Democratic Party? And will Democratic leaders allow them to engage in a shutdown fight over this?
Well, this is just the tail wag the dog thing, because Sean, you and I talked this summer about the fact that there is a defund the ICE movement brewing again. This happened in 2020 in the party. And I think, this goes to the fact that for Democrats to get power back, the country has to know that we're not going to reopen the southern border and just, kind of allow people in again, which is essentially what the Biden administration did. And so I think for the party and for the leaders, the challenge is, how do you give assurance that we will keep it closed and you will be safe, but go to this bigger question of, once you get past the bad hombres, what do you do with all these, 16 million people here? Because I think that the country is more on our side. So my hope is that Schumer and Jeffries and Shapiro and Newsom, and we're going to talk about this, can put a lid on that. Because I go to, if you're Roy Cooper in North Carolina and Sherrod Brown in Ohio, you do not want to be talking about defunding ICE. No,
we got to,
and also look, you got to remember also part of the reason they were there was massive fraud in Minnesota, in Minneapolis in particular. And so there's, if Jacob Frey wants to come out on his high horse, he's also got a lot of other stuff to address.
Well, and that's where I think this is the challenge, right, Sean? Because I think, you may not agree with this, but the administration kind of goes to 11 often, right? Meaning there's like a shock and awe overwhelming amount of force to address a Somali fraud problem, right? With ICE. And I get it. If you're illegal, you're illegal. But like, they go big and they go bold, right? And it's always been Trump's style. And I think he likes the optics, because if you get in his way, it's like, my gun's bigger than yours. Sorry, that's a bad analogy right now. But that amps up the Democratic Party.
Let's move on, Sean. I know you had a lot of thoughts about how the media has covered this.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, you want to do that real quick? And then
I think, again, look, we laid out, I think Dan and I laid out what I think we can all agree to in terms of what the situation was on the ground. And again, whether or not it was a justified shooting or not will be determined. But I think there's no question. A, she was there illegally. B, she did accelerate trying to hit an officer. And yet I was reading through all of the various different media organizations. This was AP. This is their headline, the Associated Press, the people that everybody gets their news from in terms of news organizations. Woman killed by ICE agent in Minneapolis was mother of 3, poet, and new to the city. Playbook this morning. The latest from Minnesota. Hundreds of people joined vigils in protest last night following the killing of 37-year-old Renee Good by an ICE agent. The tragic details of the deceased, a mother of 3 and a devout Christian. The Today Show, Craig Melvin, outrage after ICE shot and killed a woman. Let me ask you this. If you only didn't get to see the context that we provided this morning, what would you think after reading those headlines? That ICE went out, in my opinion, I'd be like, wow, ICE went out last night and shot a woman because she was a devout Christian and poet. This is the BS that the American people are so fed up with the media narratives, because that's not, a fair read of what happened last night, no matter whether you're on the far right, the far left, or in between. This is the problem with today's media.
Look, I'm just going to say I don't disagree with you there. I don't think that there's anything wrong with humanizing this woman. I mean, who she was in terms of a mother of Christian, but the thing that, like, I was watching CNN, I can't remember, it was the 7 p.m. hour or 8 p.m. hour. And there was a lot of talk about, there was not a lot of talk about what happened before the video started. And like, that's one of the most important facts is context, right?
Yes.
Was this woman had been hanging around for a long time.
At the end of the day, if you played this out for a second, I could see, I mean, Dan laid out a strong case for, hey, this is why the left says what they do. I'm very clear that, like, again, you impede a law enforcement officer, but to say that, like, the way those headlines read from those legacy outlets, it's all about like she was some innocent civilian that got hit on the side of the street. That's not what happened. There was unequivocally, by the best reading of the situation, somebody impeding a law enforcement operation, and it escalated way too far. But but to claim that somehow ICE just went out and targeted someone, which is the impression that they're giving, is so over the top ridiculous.